Hello and welcome to the Nerds at Large Spoilercast for WandaVision. I'm one of your hosts, Darby Hallman.
I'm Jeff Mayo.
I'm Will Outlaw.
And the gang is here. The MCU is back for the first time in a long time. It's been a minute.
Don't have to wait too much longer for the next one.
No, we don't. Actually, this year is actually going to be pretty darn good for the MCU, I think.
Yep.
And I personally, just to get this ball rolling, think this was a pretty good step back for the MCU.
Yeah.
I think this was overall this made me feel like levels of like hype and intrigue for the future of the MCU that I was a little skeptical that I would feel, because Endgame was just such a big culmination.
Mm-hmm.
Stepping into this, I was a little like, okay, what you gonna do? What you gonna do to get me back interested in this whole universe and everything? And I think this did it. This got me there.
Yep. For me, I wasn't quite like you, where I was interested where they go, but I was never gonna worried about if I was gonna be in or out or anything. It's like I watch all those CW shows. I'll watch a movie every now and then.
Yeah.
But we have these TV shows. Yeah, I think WandaVision was a very good first one to do. I know it wasn't the planned first one, but I think in the end it will be the right first one. Show, hey, this is the kind of thing we can do with these shows, and how it might affect the universe, the MCU overall universe and stuff. And yeah, good first showing.
I agree.
Definitely. Yeah, it's going to be, we'll talk about this later, but it will be interesting to see how Falcon and Winter Soldier is received and whether people are going to think it's like some sort of step back after this kind of mind-boggling stuff we got in WandaVision.
Based on what I read from people, some people think it's a step up because it looks more of the normal MCU flair.
Yeah.
And people kind of got off of WandaVision or didn't like it as much because of that. So
interesting.
Yeah, I guess it'll depend on your taste, yeah.
Yeah, I'm totally with you guys. I loved it, and it was something that was super easy for me to watch with Mitchell, my wife, as well. It wasn't like having to drag her into, like an action movie or something like that. Even though she likes those. But this one was just completely different. I love the mystery, the horror type of elements mixed with the sitcom, obviously, just made it really interesting to watch week to week, and I am so thankful that it was week to week and wasn't a just drop. I think that helped and maybe hurt it too, but we'll talk about that. But it helped me personally enjoy the show a lot more. So
yeah, I think for this show it needed to be week to week. They one of those things online debate if all shows should drop right away or some should be week to week. I think I can speak for Darby as well. Some shows should be or better week to week. Because, the mystery of it, like talking about fan theories and that kind of stuff. For some people, I think, Will kind of mention, it might have hurt for some people, and we'll surely get into that. Yeah. But I think that was good, and I'm kind of looking forward to all that kind of stuff with, again, the other MCU shows, even if something like Falcon and Winter Soldier is going to be more basic. So it'll be fun.
Yeah. I usually prefer to just be able to binge a show, but I do think some shows are just literally made for this format, and this show was absolutely one of those. Like every week was kind of a Lost style, like here's a few more breadcrumbs. It's like, just like a slow drip feed of information that I think worked so well for that, because after every episode, me and Jeff would the credits would roll and we'd sit there and talk for an hour thinking about, what did all this mean? What's going to happen next week? And not that I'm not going to go so extreme to say that the show would be bad if you binged it, but I think that week to week, definitely there's certain little things like those commercials, like those little weird like Hydra soap commercial, like a lot of things like that. I feel like we probably wouldn't have talked about nearly as much if we could just go right into the next one. It would
definitely.
They'd be forgotten by the end of watching the whole thing for sure.
There'd be no conversation. There would be no theories because everyone would know how it ended already. That would take half the fun out of it. So I think it was way more exciting as a viewer watching it week to week for sure.
Yeah, and kind of going with what you said about it being easier for someone else, and maybe not so into this to watch, with it not being as much of an action movie. I really did. I was pretty impressed, especially in those first few episodes, that Disney kind of had the guts to make something this weird. The very beginning of this show, is not a very like. And I know people like Jenny and Wolfie, my sister and brother-in-law. They watched the first episode and were like, "What the hell is this? I'm not watching this or whatever." And I bet a lot of people did that because it does not. It doesn't hold back at all. It's like, no, this is our vision. It's like this is a straight up weird 1950s sitcom, and we're not going to explain it until later. And I loved that because those first few episodes, I think are the strongest ones in the whole episode, in the whole series, because they for the most part played it straight, but the times that they broke worked so well. Like that first episode when she says like the stop. I'll always remember.
Or the times where it would just like freeze for a second and then kind of rewind. Or like, there's definitely one. The second episode where me and you both thought, we talked about after episodes, like, oh, we thought our stream messed up
because it was subtle. It was not like it distorted a bunch. It was such a little skip that you could be like, wait, what was that? What?
Yeah.
It's like,
really
well done.
It was like the Batman Arkham Asylum, like breaking your console thing. Do y'all remember that?
It's been a long time.
Or you do?
It's been a while.
The second time you meet Scarecrow in Arkham Asylum, your screen, or like in game, your screen looks like it broke the console somehow. Like there's a freeze frame and it stutters and then it just pauses for a second. And I definitely thought of that, where it's like you're not quite sure if it's something wrong with your stream or if it's part of the show. It's good.
And they would do so many subtle things like that with just like camera work, because it made it, especially in those first few episodes when it was a very sitcom style, like one, two, or three camera shot things. And whenever that would change to modern day, it did almost have like a horror element, because it was like, oh, something's off. It's like the styles clash so much that it was like, it was very obvious. Like you're in this thing and you get really comfortable here, and then it's like, boom, cameras going.
Well, I think the multiple times I think one that immediately comes to mind is the end of that first episode where the guy's choking and the camera changes, the wife looking at Wanda like, stop.
And that was like, again, and honestly, the first two episodes both, they're just not super duper. It's not very MCU. It's not very superhero comic booky. I mean, like, you watch those first two episodes and you're still like, I don't know what I'm watching, which I loved.
Yeah, I think it was also, I mean, just talking about pacing and being glad it was week to week. I'm also glad that they opened up with those first two episodes on the same day, because both those episodes were like what you were saying, Darby. Like, I could see where people could watch the first one and be like, I am just not interested. And I think if it was week to week, or they didn't do those two at the same time, it would have been even worse, because at least that gave you a little bit of a jump start and you could see more of the weirdness starting the roll down the hill, I guess. And I think that did help. So by the time you got to the second week, you were already 3 episodes in, and it was getting, a little bit more strange and interesting.
Yeah, you're right. I think that shows even more that they knew exactly what they were doing with the way they released the show. They knew that if we did 2 straight weeks of just sitcom
black and white
sitcom, we're going to lose people. So they know it's like, okay, we're going to make these first 2 episodes made to be released together.
Yep.
And because they both add up to basically be like an hour, because they're like short sitcom episodes. Like they did that really well.
Yeah, that's another thing too. This certainly helps that they were like 30 minutes, so it's not like you felt like it was a huge time sink or anything like that, especially for the beginning ones.
But in general, I kind of hope that more of these Disney Plus shows and just these streaming shows in general, because they're not being put on TV, they don't need to fall into a certain time slot. So like, I hope in general, just make the episode whatever length it makes sense for that episode. Yeah. If it makes sense to have an hour and 15-minute episode, go for it. If it makes sense to have a 30-minute episode, do it. It's like, I kind of like that. Yeah,
it's not like the general strategy is they're 2 different kind of shows, where it's like WandaVision that will have like 8 or 9-ish episodes that are generally the length of the episodes, like 30 minutes to maybe 40-ish minutes. And then ones like Falcon and Winter Soldier, they're going to have like 6 episode seasons and be probably closer to an hour per episode. Just kind of. Yeah. So they're not just doing, MCU is this. Like, depending on the show, we'll do this. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so do we want to.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask, how did you want to structure this? Did we want to go episode by episode, or just like different topics, or just freely kind of talk. Did you have one in mind?
Well, I think we can go freely. I think we can
Okay.
loosey goosey go through whatever
Sweet.
we want to talk about. Did you have something you wanted to bring?
No, I just had some topics on notebook next to me, and I just wanted to. I didn't know when we were getting to what, so I'll just wait until we go.
Well, I
Okay.
definitely want to talk just in general about how freaking good Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany's acting was.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Kind of blew me away. I mean, I knew they were pretty good actors, but like we had like maybe like a total of like an hour and a half, 2 hours of screen time for them or something. It's probably more
That's generous.
Yeah, I don't know.
Probably.
Not that much in the grand scheme of things. And I think that like in Infinity War, I think it was Infinity War, right? When they kind of had their like, I mean, it was in both Infinity War and Endgame. They kind of had their romance thing, which I think was good, and it had happened before, but like it was good.
Civil War and Infinity War where we saw it.
Yeah. Others when they had it before, and I always thought like that was good. It was just didn't have a lot of time to get fleshed out, and I still didn't really feel like I knew those characters very well, so I didn't know how to feel about it. But like now that I've seen this, now that we've had more time with them than probably even some of the big characters at this point, I think that they were like underutilized now in hindsight, because I'm like they were, I just like their acting performance and just very subtle things. The MCU that has a lot of good actors, but it's usually flashy action, all this or whatever. Like they had to do a lot of heavy lifting here with they had to keep up the facade of this thing, but then also break that, and then also like there was just this was not an easy acting job, and I think they nailed it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think both Vision and Wanda went from characters as far as like MCU character tier lists. We're like, yeah, they're okay to tops probably at most at this point. That's what this kind of series will do for you. And I imagine honestly, Falcon and Winter Soldier will probably be similar for people. I think they were kind of the same boat as Wanda and Vision, where it's like, yeah, they're cool and everything, but we have an amount of time. But actually having a full series to kind of flesh out their characters and get to know them better will do wonders.
Yeah, I think Vision has been utilized all right, I guess, in the films, but it's really interesting now that we can almost look in hindsight at the previous movies that Wanda was in, and basically those are just like preludes to her like secret origin almost, which is really interesting because I don't know, the show would make you think that she's going to be in the MCU for a lot longer, and I hope that's true. I mean, it is. I don't know. It is really interesting to me that basically everything before this series wasn't even the character that we thought she was in a weird way. Yeah. So I'm excited for her to continue showing up.
Yeah, I definitely think this series kind of lifting her up, especially since we know she's going to be in Doctor Strange 2 as a big MCU player, one of the main heroes, especially since we've lost so many at this point.
Dude, I'm so excited for Multiverse of Madness. But also just kind of shout out to MCU for back-to-back now. I feel like Endgame went back to, like, I think most people agree that, like, two of the worst movies in the MCU, maybe not the two worst, but two of the worst is Age of Ultron and Thor Dark World. I think a lot of people generally agree with that. Those are the weaker ones. Endgame made Thor the Dark World better in hindsight, like retroactively, and I feel like WandaVision is making Ultron, like the stuff that happened in Ultron, more important and like feel more impactful in retrospect, which is interesting. It's kind of cool with the MCU just being this big that like you never know where they're gonna pull something from. They'll go all the way back to Ultron, the movie you barely remember, and be like, whoop,
well, and the characters they pull from the past movies, like someone who was in the Ant-Man and Thor's and the kid from Captain Marvel are all here.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, a franchise is getting big when it literally starts referencing itself, basically, like all the time.
Yep.
And it's a hype thing. That's a lot of the big hype things. It's like, oh, yeah. Which, I do want to talk about some of those other elements, because I'm interested to see what y'all think. I know I've talked to Jeff a lot about it. I did think that some of the other characters, like in the outside the simulation, some of those characters, honestly, like basically the non-Wanda and Vision characters, I do think ultimately were a little weak. They were like, I think the acting wasn't the best, and I think the like way that they wrapped up a lot of those characters was not very satisfying. There was a lot of characters that it's like you're waiting for. All right, what was your whole point of being in the story? And then it was just kind of like, it's over.
So
you talking about like the characters in the town or like the real life characters?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm talking about
the town characters didn't really have too much going on.
Yeah, town characters for
well,
sure.
I will say this. I don't know if this is where Will's going. He'd probably know this.
Yeah.
They kind of said afterwards, like Darcy and Wu and stuff, and even Monica, their scenes were cut because of COVID. They were going to have more scenes in there to kind of fill out, like give endings to their.
It feels like it.
Yeah, because like Darcy only showed up at the like. She drove around with Vision. He phased out of the car like episode. How many episodes were there? Like seven. And she just came in to hit that truck at the end.
Yeah.
She was apparently going to have more scenes because of COVID.
That makes sense because it does feel like they just kind of fell off the face of the earth and then just came back for once. And honestly, even Rambo. Even she
got affected.
Yeah, like when Quicksilver guy Ralph Boner, which we'll have to get to, even when he came up and at the end of that episode and they like saw her or whatever, then she just kind of went away completely.
Again, they're gonna have a lot more
until
with her,
it runs
apparently.
out there and takes a bullet and that's it. It's like ultimately, I thought she was a really cool character, but then at the end of the day, it's like. She really wasn't utilized that well. They kind of just like shoved the origin story in this show for no reason. There was like, you know what I mean? And I kind of feel that way with everyone. I think Military Man was really bad, and I think he was like kind of was a nothing bad guy in the end of the day. Even Agatha, which I think is really cool in a lot of ways, at the end of the day, her motivation is I want more power. And that's kind of it. It's like we didn't really get anything else from it. It's like,
the show in general just fell into the age-old trap of, the Wonder Woman fight at the end. The CGI mess in the last episode where it's like, it was so good up until this point. Why is there
the bad guy's the mirror of the hero?
Yeah, throwing different colored orbs at each other. It's like,
yeah, literally. That's what I think.
And I will say, like, I generally agree with it. That was kind of like. Yeah, I do like, they talk about the runes or whatever, and she does that.
Yeah.
And the giant runes, and that's kind of a way of showing how much more powerful Wanda is than this witch that just literally drains magic.
Yeah.
I like that part, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. There was definitely. I still ultimately. I'm really happy with the show, but I was going into that last episode thinking like, wow, they have to do a lot in this episode. Is this going to be too much information for this one episode? And I'm like, yeah. I think they had too many loose ends to tie up. I don't think they adequately did it in that last one. And even the White Vision arc, I feel like kind of came and went so fast.
Man, yeah, I really wish that was they stuck with that a little bit longer, or if it was introduced maybe a little bit earlier. But I mean, at the end, we do have some sort of inclination that White Vision's still running around somewhere, I guess.
Yeah, and he has the Vision memories, and I guess trying to sort that out on who he is.
Yeah.
So we don't know what that means. Does he just have the memories, but none of the emotions behind them, obviously? Or something?
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's kind of the weird thing about and I'm sure this is going to be one of those complaints that we have at the end of maybe every single one of these MCU Disney Plus shows is there's going to be something like that where it doesn't feel like there's closure. Yeah. That's because, in a way, for better or worse, the closure is not supposed to happen here. It's supposed to happen in some other show or movie.
That's somewhat an MCU problem in general.
Yeah.
Is like you're never going to have complete closure because there's always the next one. It's always going to the next one. But I feel like this one is more than most when it comes to that. I think Wanda had a pretty good arc, open and close for the most part. At least like her grief arc or whatever. Going through that. But everyone else is pretty. I feel like there were a lot of threads that felt like they were going somewhere more than they did.
Yeah. Like you think about Monica and her whole thing where in the end after Quicksilver kidnap her, like Yeah, again, she didn't do too much besides block the bullets and, yeah, like you said, do the origin story. Her, as far as like what happened with her in Captain Marvel, what's her beef with her? Again, we're not going to find that out into Captain Marvel 2. It's exciting to see her again because I know you agreed, Darby, that she, as far as the side characters, the best one introduced or reintroduced. So I'm excited to see more of her.
Jimmy Woo, come on now.
I like Jimmy Woo more than Ant-Man than I did here. I don't know why.
I thought his acting was horrible here. I could not stand him.
I think he just kind of plays himself a lot.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I
liked him as a character.
I haven't even seen Ant-Man, to be fair, but like, I just like every time he was talking, I was like, oh, he's reading a teleprompter, or he was just like a cartoon character. I don't know. I just really didn't like his acting, but. That's all for everyone else. I feel like you were going to say something, Will. I might be lost now.
Oh, I was just going to say, if you are looking at this show from the viewpoint of it literally starting a new wave of the Marvel Universe, then I guess you could argue certainly that it's cool that they left so many threads open, but it does interfere with that idea of closure, like Jeff was saying. So,
yeah. Well, it's a weird thing with Wanda's arc, to kind of more think about it. In some way, yeah, she kind of dealt with grief in a way, but in the end, she's kind of doing the same thing in a way because she's reading wherever the dark tome is. I forget the name of it, and you could hear the twins like asking for her help. Like it's like, okay, I'm going to try to bring him back. The same thing she did with Vision.
Right. I mean, it does kind of feel like she's in the same place she was before, and
just more powerful.
And I'm a little like, I do think there's some clumsiness even with her arc, which I ultimately like. But there's even parts where whenever she was fighting Agatha and she's like, that's the difference between me and you. You did this on purpose. I'm like, even then I'm like, all right, Wanda, you're trying to stand on this moral high ground that I don't really think exists. Because like, yeah, you might not have done this on purpose, but you kept doing it. It's like, they're very clear that it's like, you could have stopped this and didn't. And at the end, like, she doesn't even apologize to these people that she tormented.
Yeah.
And like when Rambo was like, they'll never know what you sacrificed for them. I'm like, okay, but you're the one that put them in this, so I don't think they owe you shit. Like, there was some like weird, Wanda's on the morally high ground here. Like the show was trying to tell me that I'm like, I don't really buy that. You know, I think I'm not saying she's a horrible character, but she's morally gray. I feel like she's a lot more morally gray than they tried to give her the hero thing, and I don't really think that was appropriate, if that makes sense, you know?
Yeah.
I missed the second after credit scene. I was like, what are you talking about, Jeff? I'll have to go look now.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that was a big one.
That's a big one.
Cool.
Yeah, for that scene, I was wondering, like, okay, what's going to happen here? Is White Vision, because she's in a house in the mountains or whatever, it's like, okay, is she going to be a Doctor Strange trying to learn to control her powers? Or is White Vision going to show up or some shit? Like, oh no, she's just learning the dark arts. Because this whole thing, Agatha was kind of pushed like, hey, you're very powerful by default, but you just don't know how to use your abilities. Oh, here's the book to teach you.
I do think it's interesting that, I mean, especially based on that, you know, I don't think that Wanda is like cured of her insanity, if you want to call it that. Like, I think she's still kind of crazy, which is, I think that's a cool direction to go in, because we knew, or at least in the comics, we know that she deals with that for a long time. So I'm still excited for that part of Wanda to be with her.
Yeah, so Darby and I kind of talked at the end of the last episode that we're thinking potentially, because it's confirmed she's in Doctor Strange 2, that maybe she starts that movie as kind of the antagonist that Doctor Strange feels like he's got to deal with, because this is a sorceress who did all this fucked up stuff to a town, and Agatha even says, yo, you're more powerful than the Sorcerer Supreme.
Well, she also said you have no clue what you started, which we don't really know what that means. Exactly.
Yeah, there are theories for that, and I'm sure that will come up in Doctor Strange 2. I think it was about time for that to happen. But where's I going with it? I lost my train of thought.
You have
Doctor
no clue
Strange
what
is
you
gonna have
started.
to-
Yeah, Doctor Strange's gonna have to do something with her, and obviously she'll kind of come around, probably somewhat, but yeah, so it'll be very interesting where she goes because again, they made it clear that she's stronger than Doctor Strange.
Yeah, she's the strongest being in the MCU right now. I have to imagine that we know of.
I guess the idea is that she probably started some sort of alternate universe by doing that, where her twins are still alive. I guess.
Yeah,
I'm assuming that's where the multiverse comes in.
Because because when talking about Wanda going into Doctor Strange, being that like WandaVision was going to set up Doctor Strange, so I agree with you. That's probably where it's kind of headed.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, and I think this probably is where they're going. If they're going the direction of like Wanda's going to be a slightly villain, and then like you said, they come around or whatever, but like they're going to go that direction for somewhat. I'm into that. I wish that the end of the show would have been kind of more in line with that, because kind of like I was saying, I felt at the end of this, it felt very hero MCU-y.
Mm-hmm.
And then the very end, that last scene, I was like, okay, this kind of feels different. It felt like two different
I feel like
endings.
it's a small thing they could have done to get it closer to that is like some soldier or something trying to arrest her and kind of be like, yo, what are you going to do to me? or Monica trying to stop, like, how are you going to stop her?
Yeah. I mean, because they seem to try that. They've tried to have it both ways with this, because they're like she's breaking the thing or whatever, but then as soon as she realizes it's going to kill Vision or kids, she stops or whatever. But then there was like ultimately that whole decision or whatever feels like it's not quite as impactful if she can bring them back anyway, if she's going to try to do that. And like she kind of got to have her cake and eat it too. Like she like destroyed the thing, like saved everyone, but she's, you know what I mean? Like I think they made it like, I wish that we got to the end of WandaVision and we were all like having more debates over like, how is Wanda good or bad? Is she right? Like, is she justified? Is she not? I feel like the show tried way too much to be like, and she at the end of the day did everything right.
Yep.
And,
well, that is what makes me happy to hear about the second post-credit scene, at least, because at least there is a little bit more ambiguity than what I initially thought, which was like, yep, she's done, she's a hero again. I'm like, that was kind of lame to me. So
something random, I don't think it means anything, but something I randomly thought about. So in Spider-Man Far From Home, they talk about the multiverse. I'm blanking on Jake Gyllenhaal's character's name.
Mysterio.
Yeah, Mysterio. Being, from an alternate dimension or whatever. Turned out to be false, but they kind of hinted the stuff. Yeah. Canonically, Far From Home is after WandaVision. Because WandaVision's only like a couple weeks afterwards, where we know Far From Home is months afterwards. So
everybody's used to alternate reality.
Or at the very least, like, they're kind of obviously clearly setting up, but
Been whispers about it,
yeah. So just random thought. That I'm sure there are some MCU mega fans that are digging deeper, like, okay, is there anything in there?
Yeah. Did anyone have some favorite sitcom call-outs?
Well, as far as I remember surprisingly, like during the second episode with that comedy routine, me and you having some good laughs.
Yeah, I really, really loved that.
That was my grandma's piano.
Whatever that guy George or whatever with a mustache. Like, I legitimately think those first two episodes are probably like my favorite ones. I mean, which I know is weird. I mean, like, I think some of those middle ones do. I think the show definitely kind of peaked in that like first half, and then, not that the second half wasn't good, but it was.
It kind of went to the quote unquote predictable route where I was gonna have the weirdness, and then at some point it's got to come to head. It's like, okay, kind of MCU normalish, at least somewhat normalish type of thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I think it's always the setup of a mystery that's the most exciting. And I mean, the problem with having a miniseries like this is that it's not like you get multiple seasons to build up the mystery. It's like you have 3 episodes or whatever.
Yeah.
And also shout out to the when he's being interviewed in the like office/Modern Family thing or whatever. Why am I talking to you?
No, all that stuff is really well done. Trying to think of other sitcom things. I want to bring up something.
And probably my single favorite scene in the entire show that like gave me goosebumps, just the way it was done, is when Vision was like confronting Wanda.
Oh yeah.
and it was like okay, into the show, and the credits were going, and it's very obvious at that point that Wanda is purposely doing this, and Vision knows it too. And the divide between the like music you're hearing and the camera shots and the credits making it seem like happy-go-lucky sitcoms going down, but Vision is like screaming at her, and like they're doing this, like something about that juxtaposition was like terrifying and also like impactful, because it was like Vision is trying to, she's like, no, you're not gonna, like, I know what you're doing now, like stop trying to distract from this.
That's one of those moments where you're like,
so
man,
good.
Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen were underutilized so far in the MCU.
I want to go back and just watch that one scene, because the acting there, whenever he was like, they have children, Wanda, I'm like, Jesus.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Scene I want to bring up, not sitcom related, is the beginning of episode 4. We interrupt this program where we see the bit of the outside world when everyone's coming back from the snap in that hospital.
That was awesome. Yeah, that was cool.
That was good shit.
I forgot about that. I wasn't even going to bring it up.
I mean, again, fitting with the horror elements of the show, that was just an unimaginable moment in the MCU, where it's like you always think about the victorious heroes coming back. You don't think about how insane it would be to just be a normal person, especially in a hospital like that, having all those people come back.
Yeah,
so I really like that.
Yeah, and the snap notification is something that I feel like is underutilized in the MCU doing that stuff. We saw it in Far From Home, where it's kind of more played for laughs, which was fine and everything, but you kind of want to get the more of the real world thing. I'm glad we at least got some of it here. I imagine, again, Falcon Winter Soldier is probably going to play into that somewhat too.
That's why I feel like the shows are kind of perfect for this, because like I feel like that whole hospital scene is kind of one of those things that, like, after an in-game type movie happens, whenever nerds are just talking about it, they talk about the implications of the snap and be like, yeah, what happens if you're like in a plane, or what happens if you're in X situation, this or whatever. But like with movies that come out every few years and they're only like 2 hours long, you never really see that stuff. You just use your own imagination. But I feel like we've gotten to a point with the MCU, there's so much content and they're okay going in the weeds so much, especially in a show like this, to where like that's the type of thing that like it caught us all off guard, because we just didn't expect them to show that kind of thing. And it shows they have a lot of imagination with this, where they're like, okay, we did this whole snap, how would this work in this mundane place here, in just this random hospital? And it was just, I don't know, it was like, it's not something I ever would have expected them to like tackle like that. And I think it was so well done. And the like confusion, you see people in the background, like I would also want to watch that again, because I'm sure there's so many things you'd see in the background of like people popping in and being confused. And it's like, wow, so cool.
Well, the confusion on both sides of it too. That's part of what made it, just horrifying. Is it's not like just the doctors or whatever are horrified at these people appearing. All the people are appearing have no idea what has happened. That they missed what was it, 5 years of their life or whatever.
Yeah, it's coming back. Where's my mom? She was here just literally a second ago.
Yeah, because to the people who got snapped, it's like instantaneous, right? It's like they don't know anything is happening.
Yeah, and literally. The doctor telling Monica, like, your mom died like 2 or 3 years ago. I was always like, I fell asleep for 2 seconds.
Like, what are you talking? What?
Yeah.
Oh, so cool. Yeah, that was so well done. It was such a great cold open.
I can see that, just looking forward, I'm sure that something like that might happen with Hawkeye too, because we remember that moment in Endgame where that happened with his family. Yeah. So
I'm excited for Hawkeye.
So when is Hawkeye supposed to take place? Like, what is it supposed to be telling?
Like in the MCU? It's supposed to be after the snap, I assume. It's supposed to set up Kate Bishop. Okay. So again, Young Avengers are happening, Will.
I mean, are we gonna see? Are we gonna see him being like weird Japanese cyber archer? Because like that was pretty cool. In I want to see weird Japanese.
Probably okay. So
Japan cyber archer.
I imagine. I don't know if they confirmed anything. I imagine how that's going to set up is he did some shit in those 5 years, and it's probably going to be some revenge something. Like someone's like, hey, you kind of like half of a gang comes back from the snaps, like. And then they hear what happens to the rest, like, let's take care of this Hawkeye guy.
Can someone check on Clint? Is Clint all right?
I got to do some research here soon.
Oh
Yeah.
shit! Oh shit! I always think that logo, that font, looks like it's like a trendy startup or something. Like it looks like way too like
Too cool looking.
it just looks too like happy.
Graphic
I don't
design.
know. It's like it doesn't look like a superhero font.
Is that guy supposed to be this year?
I think it's November or something.
Anyways. Well, Will, do you have anything else on your list of things to talk about? I feel like we haven't talked about Agatha very much.
Well, we haven't talked about Quicksilver yet.
Oh gosh, yeah, duh. Well, I
was waiting for a time to come out. Obviously, we got to talk about that.
yeah.
Apparently, Hawkeye's
Been
next
putting it off.
year. Miss Marvel's at the end
really?
of this year, or I don't know,
Oh,
maybe
okay.
an unofficial thing I saw.
Yeah, Will, me and Jeff hate it and think it's the worst part of the entire show. What do you think?
Dude, it was... God, what episode did he show up in? Fifth?
Yeah, the fifth one at the end. At the end of the episode.
Because I think the end of that episode was like the peak of my hype. I was like,
Oh yeah.
oh my gosh, they can do so much with this.
Yeah.
I just could not believe it.
It was.
And yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
go ahead, Jay.
No, finish your thought.
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, come to the end of the series and it's like I knew there was gonna be like at least just 2, maybe 3 options. Either this is Pietro from a different universe, which was far-fetched but would be awesome. It was a no-name character who was just for fan service, or maybe it was them just like actually recasting Peter, which I thought would be interesting. But yeah, come for the middle option, which is it's a no name and it was just supposed to be like some cool fan service thing. I felt like that just completely fell flat for me by the end because I was really worried about that.
Yeah.
And it was true.
Well, when it happened, I was freaking out, like doing these weird things. Darren's looking like, "What, Jeff? It's not like a crazy thing. What's going on?" Then I find him afterwards. He's like, "Oh,
Okay.
Because Darby can't remember what the guy from Age of Ultron looks like.
many-
I can see the X-Men one.
Well, there was just so many implications about that. And for them to just like, I would have 100% would have rather had them just be like, not answer it at all and just like have us think about it. And like, because then in our minds, we could say that it was another Quicksilver, right? But
Yeah.
now it's just like this random bloke in this town. Like, that's so lame.
Hey, we got the Quicksilver stuff all for a boner joke.
Yeah, honestly.
Like, my biggest thing is, like, ultimately, if you ask me, Darby, do you want the MCU to connect and cross over with the Fox universe? I would say no. Because I
Besides
think...
Besides
I
Deadpool.
said, besides Deadpool, because that just obviously makes sense. It's great. But the rest of them, I would say no. I was like, no, these are bad movies for the most... Or like, I just want the MCU to make their own X-Men. And I think that would have been true. But it's like... Ultimately, I would say no, I don't want that. But my whole thing is, if you're going to do this, if you're going to end an episode with him coming to the door, hey, I'm your brother, or whatever, end of episode, and then you like, he's around, he's doing Quicksilver things or whatever, if you're going to do all that, then you have to follow through with that, I think.
Yeah.
And
It just felt like a cheap thrill.
right,
Instead of like,
yes, that's exactly what I was saying at the end. I was like, this is just to get clicks, is to get headlines without having to actually give up anything. At the end of the day, it really felt like you didn't think this show was gonna get enough buzz on its own, so you wanted to have like a hot spicy thing, but you didn't
And
want to
it's-
actually like dial in on
Yeah, there
that.
are definitely people who weren't watching this that saw those headlines like, "Oh, I gotta catch up."
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things too where it's like if there was no mention of Quicksilver at all in the show, or if they were just mentioning his passing or whatever, then that would be fine. And it's only because they decided to go that route that we're criticizing it now. You know, like if he was just not in it at all, no one would be saying, "Oh man, I wish we got
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
yeah.
Yeah.
Evan Peters in as Quicksilver." It's because they went this like kind of cheap shot route that didn't have any ramifications. That just sucks.
And it also
And-
just sucks that, like, not only did they not do the thing that they were very obviously pointing at, his character amounted to nothing. Like, he was a nothing character at the end. Like, he didn't do anything. He had
Yeah.
that, like,
Nothing
one
really
episode.
he was a little antagonistic to Wanda, but they didn't need him to necessarily do that.
No.
They could have had that stuck-up lady from the second episode do about as much. Yeah. Or something like that. Though I did enjoy the accent joke. Wandering like, yo, where's your accent? It's like, where's yours? Yeah. Wanda's like, I enjoyed that joke, but it's not worth what happened.
Yeah. No, it's not. Yeah, like you said, if you just needed someone to piss off Wanda, you could have found a better way of doing that. You know,
well, the only hope is that, like you were talking about with Infinity or Endgame and Thor: The Dark World, my hope is that in maybe not Doctor Strange, but in something in the future, that version of Quicksilver will come to mean something, that they will somehow redeem that aspect. Because I do think that's the only aspect of the show that is just genuinely upsetting. I think everything else is great.
The thing is also, like, there's no reason for it to be that one besides the whole, they recasted him line, because May just wasn't available. They could have gotten, I don't know, I can't remember his name, the guy who played him in Age of Ultron, and nothing really would have to change that whole thing besides like one or two lines.
Yeah.
If they weren't going the multiverse route, then just give us the other guy.
Because like it kind of even doesn't make sense with them in just kind of hindsight. Because during the Halloween episode, it happened before with Vision, where Wanda just saw a flash of dead Vision, and then later dead Pietro. Yeah. And but it was the Evan Peters version. It's like that doesn't even make sense. The guy looks different. Like that scene feels like it was meant for normal Pietro.
I agree, because the whole time we were thinking like, oh shit, is Vision actually a corpse that's like walking around?
Well, we didn't even talk about that. That was, I think, great misdirection on the show's part.
Yeah. But like Jeff said, it does make it. It's like, okay, that kind of makes sense for Vision because she's seen that before. She has not seen Evan Peters shot up before. This is not something that she's seen in her trauma. But yeah, I do agree that was a pretty good misdirection. It definitely made me feel like it made me feel very uneasy too. Every time I was seeing Vision after that, I'm like, is what we're seeing completely fake, and this man's actually a corpse? A corpse.
Luckily, he's not as bad as a corpse.
Is she like a puppet with a corpse?
In some ways,
and remember the guy, I don't know, Mr. Army Man, had like a video of her stealing the corpse, but we come to realize that wasn't even true. So
just nice and edited to, trick the uninformed.
They definitely tricked all of us because we were all like, wait a minute, I thought we straight up saw. And I think if you go back and look, it's like it's just her like dropping down. We don't actually see her do it.
Oh, really?
No, I realized that right afterwards. It's like that shot of her dropping down. It's like, or her coming in, made it like she came in and did it. Like, okay,
but she did come in, but she didn't actually take the body. I think he just like leaves. He's like, look, she broke in.
Yeah,
and the body was missing. So
no, I liked how for that. I think it was a mid-credit scene or whatever. Like we were asking that question, like, okay, that's a weird plot hole so far, or something that doesn't make sense. And they immediately showed that. I was like, okay, good on you, show. You know what we were thinking.
Also, shout out to just random scenes. I did love the car going into the thing and being shot back out in the car. It's like half circus car, half army car. I thought that was cool. What did y'all think about? I don't know much about her. In there, she's supposed to be Photon Rambo or whatever. Yeah, I mean, like, what is her power exactly?
I don't even know. I mean, I know all I knew was that she was like the third Captain Marvel at some point in the comics, but I really have no idea. Even in the show, I was like, I don't understand what your power is.
That is kind of a pet peeve of mine with a lot of superhero things, is when like I watch an entire superhero property and I still don't know what the hell your power is. Like that's definitely.
It was not clear, to say the least. Oh. She can see electricity and bullets can go through her. That's all I got.
Her little vision thing's cool. She looks cool when she does it.
Yeah.
Her and I guess just Agatha. I thought Agatha was like, I loved her early on when she was just like hamming it up as the like cheesy neighbor. I thought her acting was really good. And like shout out to something Hahn, whatever the voice actor, whatever the actress's name is, Kathryn Hahn. To have that kind of range to do like the comedic hammy cheesy thing, but then also do the I'm a badass witch later on, do that in the same
that song.
And that song. That song. I killed Sparky too. That's great.
Jerks.
But ultimately, I did feel like once she became witch, I was like, it felt very old MCU, where it's like you're a villain that's just not very well thought out as far as your motivations.
I was like pretty much up until we were getting really close to the end of the last episode, like a little twist of there was someone else behind it, kind of.
I was still expecting something like that. Yeah.
Well, the only thing I guess that was kind of confusing about those last couple episodes, well, specifically the last one, is that like for a show that had gone so long without that classic MCU action scenes, I don't know why they decided that they needed one at the end.
Yeah,
it's like they had gone for so long without doing that. It's not, I don't feel like many people who are watching WandaVision were like aching for a fight scene between two wizards or whatever. I think it just would have been much better if they had found some other way to conclude that, you know.
Or at the very least, if you're going to tell me that like two super powerful dark wizards are fighting each other at the end of the show, I would hope that it was a little more interesting than just throwing balls of light at each other. Like they did it a little bit when she like kind of like goes into her mind and takes her back to Salem and does that thing. Like
that quick thing, she goes quickly
cool.
behind them and like does her little wizard.
That was an Age of Ultron callback. Did y'all catch that? He did that in Ultron a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, that was cool, but I wanted more of that. Like, I would have
more tricky magic than just Dragon Ball.
I would have much rather if their fight was a bunch of illusions of them like fucking with each other's head back and forth. I think that would have been a lot more interesting than I'm the purple witch, you're the red witch, pew pew.
Or if I summon a devil or something, I don't know.
Yeah, something more interesting. I mean, I have to imagine that like I'm not gonna like go so far as to say it makes me worried about it. I'm like, you know, for your first foray, or not first foray because Doctor Strange or whatever, but it's like another foray into magic versus magic or whatever. It's like, if that's the best you got, I worry about Doctor Strange. But
I wonder part of it, like budget was affected it somewhat because you look at those, like the Vision v Vision fight, and
that was rough.
Yeah, so I was like, oh, this is obviously a 3D model. Like I know they all are in CG and stuff, but this is more painfully obvious.
Yeah, I ultimately am not. I mean, because Doctor Strange, I think the plot of Doctor Strange is kind of whatever, but the visuals in Doctor Strange are fucking crazy.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like we talk about the boring Wanda stuff now. Yeah, imagine what Wanda can do now with a Doctor Strange like style touch and that movie budget.
Yeah, it'll be sweet. It'll be sweet. I mean, yeah, ultimately, I don't think it's the biggest deal, but like Will said, it's just, I mean. If you were someone who wanted action and that's the only that like you really just wanted action, then I don't think one action scene at the end of this big series is going to satiate you. So those people aren't happy, and the people who are really enjoying it for what it is also aren't happy. So it's like,
you wouldn't have watched the previous 4 hours of content anyway if you wanted that, you know.
Exactly.
Especially with Falcon and Winter Soldier around the corner.
Yeah, like that. That's your jam. You know,
So I'm curious with all of us watching weekly, did any of y'all fall into the trap of like thinking some secret cameo was going to happen or any conspiracy theories that didn't pan out? Like,
I thought there was a pretty decent chance Doctor Strange was going to be in the last episode.
Yeah, I did too. I would say that I thought that I was like in on those theories or whatever. I was like following them and I was into it, but like at least this wasn't a show that I don't think I ever had any theory that I was like locked on. Yeah. That was like, this is gonna happen. This has to happen. I think I was always like, I think this might happen, but this show subverts me at every turn. So it's like, because I think this is gonna happen, it probably won't. So like,
I guess the closest thing for that for us was the whole Quicksilver actually meaning something.
Yes, which they wanted me to think. Like that was like a very obvious.
That's not our fault.
I think a lot of the fan expectations for this show got out of hand, and it's not the show's fault. That one is the show's fault. I mean, come on, you know what you're doing. I agree. But like, so I expected like Doctor Strange. I expected it to be a bigger bad behind the scenes. So maybe it ended up being slightly smaller of a story than I thought. But
a lot of people called Agatha. I was pretty impressed by that. A lot of people called her.
Yeah, I definitely didn't call her from the beginning for sure. Once we got to like the Sparky thing and some of the other areas of like that, I was like, sorry.
I did think there's gonna be something with her. Odds are probably from close to the beginning. because she was just a lot more prominent than the other ones. So I figured, okay, there's something here.
I didn't think that she was going to be like the main bad. I will say, like, that scene with her.
I was thinking more of a pawn than anything for a main bad guy.
That scene with her and Vision in the car threw me off the scent.
Yeah,
like I think that was
I bet that. Yeah,
where it was like, oh, okay, well, she's like, not she's being messed with.
Yeah. We haven't really talked about Billy and Tommy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
These kids, I guess, are going to be a going concern. I don't know anything about comics. I don't know what they're going to be exactly.
So there's been rumors of years, literally years, that they were going to make a Young Avengers movie or show or something like that. And with Kate Bishop and Hawkeye and these two in this show,
Miss Marvel
and Miss Marvel, it seems like that's probably going to happen.
Young.
Okay.
Young Avengers. Yes. So, I mean, presumably, they are going to wind up somewhere else. But I mean, I liked them in WandaVision. I think they were. It created a good family dynamic, even though it was. I mean, the like super fast pregnancy and all that kind of stuff was fun hijinks, I guess, for those early episodes. But it was definitely weird.
It did throw me off. Like, okay, we know Vision's fake and can't live outside the thing. So I don't know about you, Will. Dart and I were kind of thinking, okay, what about the twins? Because Wanda was pregnant. Are they technically real and can live outside of it? The answer was obviously no, but we had those questions.
But they came out of her body, so it's like, what was going on? I don't know.
Did she fake the pain of labor?
Yeah.
If so, Wanda, you're committing to the bit a little too much.
Well, it was like a 2-minute labor. So.
Yeah, true. Sitcom labor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did always think that the connection with her and the kids was like somewhat hard for me to buy completely. I don't know if anyone else felt that, but like the weirdness of the kids and how quickly they came into being, and maybe it's just because kid actors are just not that good, and I think they are included in that. There was always just like a level of like weirdness where I'm like, y'all are some weird, creepy alien monsters that are going to come up and kill her or something. It's like, I never quite got the mother and the son. I guess I was always just so uneasy about those two kids. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? I don't know.
They're like, we're bored. We're aging up.
I definitely thought that those kids were going to like kill her or try to kill her at some point. Like, I thought something was going to kill her.
So
can't say that ever crossed my mind.
Yeah, can't say I was on the same wavelength there.
Well, I was running under the assumption that like someone else is controlling this above Wanda, and that they might like use it against her or something.
Well, that's a good point too, because I heard some people like, throwing out the idea that like Mephisto was all over this and all that kind of stuff. And I am very, very, very happy that they allowed Wanda to be like the bad guy. Like, sure, Agatha was there and she had some sort of influence, I guess, but it really was her that did, created this whole mess.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that they leaned into that and let her be a bad guy for a little bit.
Yeah, I saw that too, and got a feeling that could be what was unleashed, and maybe Mephisto will be in Doctor Strange, maybe.
Yeah,
because we know nothing about a potential villain for that.
Well, and Mephisto does have like some sort of history with the twins. So yeah, that's interesting.
Oh, cool.
Well, actually, that's actually really interesting, Jeff. Now that you think about it, because Mephisto and Doctor Strange would make a lot of sense, but also Mephisto with Spider-Man, we know they have a history too.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
Spider-Man's identity was revealed in Far From Home.
Yeah, and we're supposed to get Doctor Strange and Spider-Man this year.
Yeah, so
we're supposed to get Doctor Strange this year?
Doctor Strange is going to be in the Spider-Man movie that's coming out this year.
Oh, Doctor Strange. Okay. Yeah, the character Doctor Strange.
Yeah. We're getting the movie next year. And guys, can you believe that apparently Black Widow's going to be in theaters in 2 months? They're still going strong on that.
I feel like that movie isn't even going to be exciting now that we're like entered into this completely new phase.
It certainly was.
Like, why would I want to go back?
It was like the worst one to be the. It keeps getting delayed and keeps getting hyped up for like had to have all this build up. It was probably like the worst one.
I'm much more excited, and I'm sure y'all agree with me with Spider-Man and the Eternals at the end of this year if they come out.
Yeah. But if this was like Multiverse of Madness that kept getting kicked down the road, I'd be like, God, give it that damn guy. Like, I just want to, like, I'm so excited for that movie.
Well, I mean, yeah, something with Black Widow, we just know that that's not going to have any real implications for other Marvel movies. It's kind of like a one and done, which is cool, but
They're kind of setting
find
up
out
Black
what
Widow's
happens,
successor, apparently. So
oh, okay. Well,
it at least won't feel as climactic as like a crazy Spider-Man multiverse crossover and then a crazy Doctor Strange. You know, it's like I have a feeling it's going to feel tame.
And the weird thing is we're getting like a similar MCU Disney Plus series in Falcon and Winter Soldier, like right before it. So we'll be comparing the spy action directly. It's like from a storytelling standpoint, I'm of the opinion like it was done right. TV shows are generally better than movies as far as like this kind of things.
Yo, man. That Loki trailer, though.
Loki trailer, I agree.
That Loki trailer looks pretty damn good, though.
I hope that they have the balls to actually like make the TV shows. I guess we were talking about this earlier. Like, I hope they don't try to make all the big stuff happen in the movies. Because I do think WandaVision was kind of a big event at the end of the day. But I don't want it just to be like, oh, yeah, this is set up for this next movie. Because, I mean, they have all the big names and stuff. It's not like they're making any concessions there. So
I feel pretty good about it because I think, especially with that last scene, I would be pretty shocked if Wanda wasn't a pretty big part of Doctor Strange. Like, I feel like when you're watching Doctor Strange, you're going to feel like you're missing something a little bit if you hadn't watched WandaVision, which I think is...
Yeah.
And the fact that, you know, Falcon's going to become Captain America probably in this upcoming series, that's a pretty big thing.
Yeah,
it's a big thing to happen in a show. Like, and I just also appreciated that WandaVision. It's like, no, we're not going to try to make this. We're not going to try to make this completely comprehensible if you just jump right into this. It's like, no, you need to have watched Age of Ultron. You need to have watched these other things.
I did see
like,
some.
I respect that.
Kind of like the Setter of Fred, like, yo, but I haven't watched MCU in forever. Can I jump into this? Everyone was like, no. You won't understand anything of these characters.
You like kind of cripple yourself in the knees with storytelling if it's like we have to make everything a jumping on point. It's like, well, then you can't you can't really tell a compelling
the fact that
story
was a criticism for some in Infinity War baffles me to this day.
Yeah, people were like reviewed Infinity War or Endgame poorly because it's like I didn't watch any of the other movies and I didn't understand this. It's like, well, no shit.
That is a strength, not a weakness.
No, that is the strength of the MCU, is that it's like 20-something properties long, and it all just keeps telling the story. It's cool. It feels like comic books with like insanely high budgets at this point.
Oh, yeah.
Which is pretty sweet. And then WandaVision seems like a very like one of those kind of like obscure, weirder comics that you really wouldn't have expected to be translated into film/TV, but we're at the point where it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think now with the addition of the shows, it is making me legitimately wonder if the MCU will ever like go away. So I think it was always like, okay, we're always leading towards Endgame, right? We're going movie by movie. We're gonna end up at this one point where everyone comes together, and now past that, it's like, man, we have what, like 8 new TV shows or something. It's like, is this going to go for another 20 years? I mean,
listen
I'm
how
certainly not
excited we are theorizing about the future of this. And that's kind of crazy after like Endgame. I think a lot of other properties Endgame would be the point that they could just never recover from. They'd be like, well, we did the one thing. We're never going to capture that light again. But it's like, this is pretty soon afterwards. I'm like, yeah. And I think it's because they recognized that they did like that they culminated and they got like bigger and bigger. It went from like little, Earth, like city threats to Earth, to the universe, to space or whatever, and ending in Thanos. They know they did all that. I think they seem like they're handling this in a smart way. They're like, okay, this next era of MCU needs to be a little different, and we're introducing magic. We're going to introduce like the Eternals. We're going to introduce like further universe space stuff. It's going to have a different feel to it, which I think it needs to have. Like, this era of MCU needs to have an identity separate from the first one.
And going in the reverse of that a little bit, which I think is cool, is with the shows going to Miss Marvel and She-Hulk, which are going to be more street level, it sounds like, at least to start out with, which I know they're the Netflix shows, but those aren't really canon or really anything.
Don't dare say that.
I'm sorry.
Daredevil was canon.
I want Daredevil.
I think Daredevil will show back up. The rest of them,
I won't. I'm sure you agree with this one. I want Daredevil and Spider-Man. That movie's too full.
Yeah,
well, there's the rumors of it, but hopefully, I was hoping the movie was just going to be the fallout of the identity reveal, and like Daredevil was going to represent him, and that's how it got started.
Yeah,
That's what I wanted, but yeah. So, like, I agree with you. I like how they're expanding it, but they're also going smaller with it in a way.
I mean, I think the biggest compliment to the MCU right now is that every property I go into, that when I don't know anything about the character from other things, I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, oh, I know that everything they do is going to be quality. So it's like, oh, I don't know anything about She-Hulk. Let's go. I don't know anything about the Eternals. Let's go. It's like, I just want to, like, yeah.
She-Hulk, law drama. Like, legitimately, she's supposed to be a lawyer.
Let's go. Maybe that's where the not punch. Maybe that's where Daredevil comes in. They have a law battle at the end instead of a fight, like a fist fighting battle. Yeah. Fun stuff. Well, does anybody have any parting thoughts about WandaVision?
Loved it. So glad that it opened phase 4. What is this? Phase 4?
I don't know.
Phase 9. Let's just skip a bunch of them. Let's just go straight up.
There's enough stuff to consider.
I am glad that there was a year-long break. I think that made me enjoy the series way more than I would.
I agree.
Otherwise.
I 100% agree too. I think distance makes the heart grow fonder. I think it was nice with how like crazy Endgame was. I think other people might disagree. Jeff might disagree, but I think it was very like, and it wasn't even planned to be this way. But I think it ended up being a very good thing that they had to take a break.
I think like I didn't necessarily need the gap in between it, but I think it was nice it ended up with WandaVision being the restart of it all, and not Falcon and Winter Soldier or Black Widow like it was supposed to be.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah.
And honestly, and Dari mentioned his hype for Loki. Just the weirdness of that gets me more excited for Loki. Like, oh, they're probably gonna go crazy with this. It's gonna be very crazy, and I'm all for it.
My parting thought is that costume at the end was dope.
Yes,
It was pretty
so cool.
Pretty sick costume.
She finally has an actual costume and not a hoodie.
Well, and a name.
If I was her, I would just wear that costume like to Costco or something. It's just too good, It's just like, or I guess she's a wanted woman. She can't go to Costco anymore.
But why did her Halloween costume look like her actual costume that materialized out of thin air?
Foreshadowing.
I was trying not to think about it. I was like, whatever. I'll just enjoy it.
Why was Quicksilver Ralph Boner? Who knows? There's a lot of questions. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning into this. This was a ton of fun. If you want to hear another probably hour plus of people talking about superhero shit, these two gentlemen are going to be doing a Snyder cut. Spoilercast.
Yeah.
8 more days. 8 more days.
And you probably look forward to us doing a lot of the other MCU shows as they premiere. I know Darby's not that interested in Falcon, Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
So maybe me and Will can do it. If you're going to watch it, Will.
Yeah, certainly going to watch it. So sounds good.
Hell yeah. So look forward to all that shit. Well, Will, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure as always.
Yeah, man. Been cool.
All right. Peace, everybody.
Bye.
See ya.